Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome to our next part of Let's Talk. This time, we're going to be talking about being single. We've just talked about relationships, but equally important is being single, finding fulfillment and purpose and joy in being single, which I think society often kind of questions, but actually, it's when we look at the Bible, when we look at different aspects, then we can find that actually being single is a very positive thing. To help us do that, we've got a guest. Lisa Adji is with us. Dr. Lisa Adji, for the full title. We've known Lisa for years. She's an amazing person. She was part of the pastoral team that took on the church when we transitioned back to the Southampton area. On top of that, she's also, she looks after Tear Fund, or she is part of the Tear Fund team. She's a speaker, a recruitment and a development specialist for Tear Fund. And she's got a doctorate in, and we have to read this out, people, because it's just all, just the title's confusing. In biochemistry and physiology.
Yes! That's it.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
And she's been able to do all of this and is involved in a whole load of stuff, but while being single. So we just thought it'd be fantastic to have Lisa on, just to give her views on some of the questions that have come in. So we've got some questions, we're going to go through them. The first question is from me. Is it okay to be single, Lisa?
Heck no, I'm joking. It is. It's absolutely fine. Stay single. If you're single, you're doing great. Keep going. Definitely. I would say 100% yes, yes, yes. And I would actually add to this that somewhere along the line in our culture, our society, in our churches, we have kind of built this narrative that we're all waiting to kind of be married, and that's when we've really kind of grown up or become mature or sorted out our issues. And I would actually say that this is actually counter to scripture. That actually, Paul in 1 Corinthians actually celebrates singleness. He actually says, this is a great season of life. If you can stay here, stay here. And so we need to actually encourage people that if you're single, you're not at the bottom of the shelf. You're not the one that's been forgotten. It's not because you're ugly. It's not because you've got a whole bunch of issues you need to sort out, and God has just not chosen you yet for marriage. Actually, that it's so important that we encourage people that this is a great season of life, and that actually it's just different seasons, that one isn't better than the other. We don't want to pit them against each other of, you're either in the married camp or you're in the single camp, but actually that they're just different seasons, and both are beautiful, both have purpose, both have callings to them, both have different, parts to them. And actually it's okay if you're married, it's okay if you're single, but definitely 100% if you're single, well done. You're doing a great job.
It's funny you mentioned the word seasons, Lisa. Do you see, if you're single, are you just in a season before you get married? Because obviously we've got people, we know of people who have been single all of their lives and done incredible things. How would you define that?
So I would say that for some people it is a season, and for some people this is a long-term part of a season that lasts for the remainder of their days. And that's absolutely fine. For some people, this is a chapter in part of your story, and there might be a different chapter of marriage later on. And for some people, this might be a chapter that lasts right the way throughout the story. And I think that even in saying that, I know that some people will feel that tinge of like, oh, I wonder which one I am, or actually both are absolutely fine. Both are absolutely okay. If you have no desire to be married, that's absolutely fine. And if you do have a desire to be married and aren't married yet, that too is absolutely okay.
That's great. And Liz, how would you personally say you've found that fulfillment in the chapters that you've gone through of singleness? How have you personally walked that journey?
Get some great friends. It's definitely a huge one. Have some great friends, but also for me, I think it goes back to, I guess, how I live my life in general. And for me, I remember just having this God moment where God just said to me, what I'm running my race and what I'm running against isn't everyone else. It's not against yourselves. It's not against my peers. It's not against my friends. It's not against that Instagram influencer. I'm running against what God had in mind when he created me before the foundations of the world. When God formed me before I was in my mother's womb, when he thought of me, Lisa Ajay, what did he have in mind? What was he thinking? What stuff did he put in me? And that's what I want to get to the end of my days and be like, yes, like, you know, I went for all of them, you know, like I explored all of it. I lived out all of it. I lived that great adventure that he had in mind. And when you start to think like that, it starts to make you think that I really haven't scratched the surface on the stuff I had in mind at all, you know, and that's not just like work and ministry, but even just fun adventures, things to see, the world he created. There is so much out there. And once we start to live our lives that way, it stops being like a boring single season that we're waiting to get married for, and it becomes an adventure that we're having with God. Like, God, what's next? What's around the corner? What do you have for me? Who have you put in my world? How do I best serve them? And even for us as Christians, I look around at the world right now. 2020 has been crazy.
Yeah, I can say that.
Crazy. We have some work to do, people. We have some work to do, Christians. And so we can't be sitting around moping around about the fact that we're not married. You know, there is so much that we can get involved in, so much that we can serve in, so much love to be poured out to people around us. It would be a real shame if we just sat back and said, I'm not married, and so this is it, you know? It would be a real shame.
Yeah,
that's such a beautiful answer, Lisa, and I think so unselfish in everything you've said there. You've taken the spotlight off of yourself, and what you've done is turned it around and put it onto others around you, and onto the work, and onto the needs around us. And I think that's just such a beautiful answer, and in that there's such incredible fulfillment.
That's great.
Stunning.
So some of the questions we've got that have come in, one of them is this: is it better to commit to being single forever, like Paul, I think you've already mentioned in 1 Corinthians 7:6, or is it better to keep an open mind and approach life with the attitude that you don't know what God has around the corner?
Yeah, wow. So I would say that we kind of, as a single person, this is being honest, because I could come and be like, oh, it's wonderful. And it is wonderful. I have a great life. I really do. But we bounce between these two thoughts of, yay, I'm single and I'm free and I don't have kids. I remember at the beginning of lockdown, there was this meme that went around on social media that said, imagine lockdown with like kids and being trapped at home. And it was like all the single people being like, yay! You know, I'm sure your family life is wonderful, but there are benefits of being single.
We were like, yay, our kids are teenagers. We don't have to homeschool. That was us.
Yeah. You know, it's just a different season. But we bounce between these two thoughts of, yay, I'm single and I'm happy and I'm content, and God, you know, is there someone around the corner and what's going to happen? And I think what I would say is we need to be honest about where we're at. We need to be honest about what's going on internally. And what sometimes I find is that we can kind of pretend that we're in either camp. And so we can pretend that we're content because we're like, if I'm content, then God will bring somebody along. And so I need to pretend that I'm content so that, you know, I can be in a relationship, you know, and then sometimes we can be on the other end where we're, you know, actually saying that we're keeping an open mind, but deep down, we're actually desperately looking. You know, every time someone walks into the room, you're checking their hands to see if they're married or not, you know, all of those different things. Actually, the most important thing is for us to be honest about where we're at. Where are you genuinely at? Are you actually wanting to make that commitment to be single for the remainder of your days? If great, do that. But be honest about it. Be honest and say, God, this is what I want to commit to. I might struggle, but this is what I want to commit to. God, I feel called. I feel a desire. I feel a pull towards getting married and having family in that sense one day. God, I want to keep an open mind for whenever that might come about. be honest in that. Help me to not be desperate. Help me to not be, staring at every single guy that walks in the room. Help me just be honest in whatever space you find yourself in, or whatever you want to commit to. Be true in that, as opposed to pretending that we're in either camp and then not really being in either camp.
That's really good, Liz. And I think the whole thing of being honest and real and saying, actually, I'm human, and sometimes I really desire, companionship, and really desire someone to share your deepest thoughts with, and your heartfelt emotions with, and but also in that, knowing that God wants to actually be that person that you are so close with, closer than, like the song says, closer than a brother, walking intimately with him in such a way, and not even sometimes my husband can meet those needs in me. Only God,
really God.
Only God. And actually, we've got to be in that relationship to get that fulfillment and that intimacy with God, haven't we? In that relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's beautiful to hear a married person say that, because so often as a single, you can think that I'm waiting till I get married to fulfill that desire and that need. But actually, there are some desires and needs that we have that only God can fulfill. And even for you to put that on your husband and wife is unhealthy. So it's so important that we don't see it as this is going to all be sorted out once I get married, because sometimes it doesn't.
Absolutely.
And I think from what I've seen as well, I think the worst thing that can happen to someone is they marry the wrong person.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not careful, if you're in that camp where you're desperate to get married, you're much more likely to choose a person out of desperation as opposed to a person out of calling.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the worst case, actually. I think that is awful, and the rest of your life then is that situation.
Yeah, you're dealing with the consequences of that then, aren't you?
So to actually be fulfilled, to be fulfilled in who you are, just you and God. And then if God brings someone else in addition to that, then that's great. But if not, that's okay too, because it's you and God, and God is all that you need. And I think whether you're married or single, I think you need to get into that place of saying, you know what, God, you are all that I need. If all I have is you, then that's more than enough. And then you're in a healthy place where a relationship can be added on, if a relationship is going to be added on, or you're in a healthy place just to go on and have the freedom that being single brings to achieve whatever God's got for you, really. And either way, you're on a winner. I think that's great. The second question is this: as a single person, how do you ensure that you don't become over-dependent on friendships to fill the place of a spouse? Not in a dodgy way, but just in a sharing every detail, every thought, and every feeling kind of way.
I love that. Not in a dodgy way, but just in a
dodgy way. Definitely not in a dodgy way.
There are some really unhealthy friendships out there, and I think this is so real, because actually a lot of friendships probably have this kind of element or this struggle sometimes of where do you cross the line into unhealthy, and how do you keep it within the boundaries of healthy friendship and not look for something from the person that they were never meant to give. And I think a little bit like what you guys were saying, that desire to be so deeply known and deeply loved, there has to be a God element in that, that we can't seek that from anything else. And that's not even just human beings, just any addictions, any experiences, any of those things. None of those things are going to answer that question of us being deeply known and deeply loved like God can. And so it's so important that that's foundational for us. But then outside of that, how do we have healthy boundaries in our friendships? And I think that so often we can look to get more from the other person than what we should. And so I would say our friendship should be mutual, that they should be two people who give and receive from each other, that it shouldn't be one-sided. If you're the one doing all the talking, that's a bad sign. If you're the one doing all the sharing, it's a bad sign. It should be mutual. They should go both directions. Please check that it's going in both directions. Because that's so important, that a friend, two are better than one, because both get a return, and so it's so important that it's mutual. I would also say that that we also, I guess, don't look for that person to fulfill something in us that they were never designed to fulfill. And for some people, this is a big reality, that actually what you're looking for is marriage, but that person isn't your partner, that person isn't your spouse, that person isn't, you know, going to live everyday life with you. They're your friend, you know, and they're going to have parts of their world that are different to yours, and that's absolutely okay. And so there shouldn't be elements of control. There shouldn't be elements of, you're not allowed to do this because I'm not doing it. Like, all of those things are indicators that there is unhealthy habits and things like that inside your relationship. I know for me, I actually used to always struggle with friendships. Like, I'm not sure who my friends are all the time. And I remember going to counseling. And when I went to counseling, I remember my counselor working with me on that, and being like, what I didn't realize was I wasn't receiving love from the people who were already around me. And so I was expecting them to fulfill needs that I had never ever shared. And so it might have felt like a codependent relationship, but because I wasn't being present in the other half of the relationship, I wasn't sharing, I wasn't saying, hey, I also need a friend sometimes. I also have stuff that I want to talk about. So we can also go the other way of actually not sharing with our friends and having that need met friendship. So it's so important that it's mutual. It's so important that it's honest, but it's also so important that it's healthy, that, you know, it goes in both ways, that we keep it free from all of the devices of the enemy that seek to destroy.
Love it.
It's really, really good, Liz. And another thing that often people come to me about friendships, and they're struggling in friendships and this, that, and the other. And I always say, well, what is your expectation on your friends?
Yeah.
What is that expectation? And if they begin to start listing expectations, then right there's a problem. Because if you suddenly start having expectations from someone that never signed a contract to say, I agree that all these things are going to be part of this contract of friendship, there's a problem. And I would say, no, actually friendship is not about expectation. In fact, the moment you start having expectation on someone is the moment you're going to be deeply disappointed when they don't meet those expectations that they never knew was upon them in the first place. Exactly. So I think that's exactly what you've said, and I think that's right, coming at that neutral point where there's no expectation, and actually if they desire to bless you and honour you and be there for you and talk to you, then that is always a bonus, and but it should never be expected.
No.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Shall I just go and shut
please
the dog
excuse
up?
our dog. The problems of doing Zoom at home. The other question we've got here is: should Christians ever go on dates where with someone that they can't feasibly imagine marrying, or should they only go on dates with people that they can imagine marrying? And I think that goes in with non-Christians as well, or lapsed Christians. But if those people are sympathetic to their views, how does that all work with using people to date? I know we're actually talking about being single, but I guess part of that for some people is an element of, if I suddenly not become single, what does that look like as well? Who should
so this is like the dating world, and I think it's a big world.
You could probably do a whole session on the dating world.
I think the church I think the church needs to talk about it so much more, because a friend said this the other day: any space that we don't speak on, the enemy occupies. And so it's so important that we talk about it, that we bring it into the light, that we encourage, that we teach, that we set guidelines and boundaries that keep it healthy. And I think when it comes to dating, and dating as a Christian and dating within the church, there's a whole realm of stuff. And so the first part of your question was around whether we date someone that we can't see ourselves marrying.
You know what, Lisa, I'm going to interrupt just for a second, because we are already, believe it or not, up to the 20 minutes.
No!
Yeah.
It's gone so quickly.
No.
So what I think we'll do is actually take that as a lead question on our next session. If you're happy to come back next month.
Yeah, because that's such a good question.
Talk dating. I think we should
It's such a good question.
Dating next month.
Talk dating next month.
That would be good.
Okay. So we'll do that next time. So we're going to talk dating next month. But hopefully you guys have got a lot out. Thank you so much, Lisa,
Thank
for
you,
coming
Lisa.
and giving us
Oh, I
some
loved
time.
it.
So lovely
Thank
to
you
see
guys
you
so,
again.
so
and
much.
speak with
Thank
You're
you.
amazing. Thank you.
Honestly, I just want to say before I go, these guys are incredible people. If you are a part of Gateway Church, you are in for a treat. Stay planted, stay you're going to grow, you're going to be shaped. Honestly, thank you guys so much for all you've in my life, but also the opportunity to join you guys on this. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bless you, Lisa.
You're
Thanks,
amazing.
Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch because we're going to get you back and talk about dating. If
I
that's
can't
all
wait
right.
to answer that question.
Awesome. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Okay, guys.
Thank
Well,
you,
be
Lisa.
blessed. Thank you for joining us for our third part of Let's Talk.
Bye.